Time's up. Robert Jobson calls royals to remove Harry from line of succession within 2 weeks. After more than a day and a half in the witness box, his courtroom ordeal was finally over. How has that made you feel? His barrister, David Sherborne, asked sympathetically. Harry puffed out his cheeks and replied emotionally, "It's a lot." This was, in fact, only round one of the prince's egocentric battle to reform what he insists is wrong with the free press in Britain. According to Harry, his father, King Charles, has described this quest as a suicide mission. After becoming the first senior royal to give evidence in court for more than a century, it wasn't quite as bad as that. But unlike when the future King Edward VIII took the stand in what became known as the Royal Baccarat scandal, there's a lot at stake. Some believe Harry's decision to take on the tabloids over alleged phone hacking and illegal privacy intrusions is courageous. If his claims are upheld, it is right that he should be compensated and receive an apology. Others feel that his decision is foolhardy, constitutionally dangerous, and will ultimately achieve very little other than to generate even more headlines about his private life. Since leaving the UK for California, Harry has had plenty of airtime and shown very little concern about revealing the private details of his life and that of his family, the publication of which he would otherwise deride as tabloid intrusion. He has had hours to put forward his views in self-indulgent documentaries and softly television interviews to sell his memoir, Spare, in which he controlled the narrative. His memoir pointed the finger to blame at many who were afforded no right to reply. Indeed, Harry seems to have spent all his time since quitting as a working royal and moving to the US, telling his truth through every medium available to him. This time, however, his truth was under oath, as he was cross-examined not by a TV friend, but by a razor-sharp King's counsel, Andrew Green, on behalf of MGN. Despite having years to prepare for his day in court, Harry simply did not have answers to the most obvious questions of all, time and time again. Harry's response to Mr. Green's questioning was usually, "I don't know." Harry was taken through 33 different stories that he had claimed to have come from unlawful information gathering, but his case was hardly bolstered by it being pointed out that many of the stories had appeared in other newspapers in the weeks before. Some had even been printed before the prince owned a mobile phone. Harry wasn't going to let those points deter him, though. Who wrote that story? He asked repeatedly. You could put that question on them. On several occasions, he had to be reminded by Mr. Green that it was his role to ask the questions, and Harry had simply to answer them. His second day in the witness box carried on in a similar vein. This time he was confronted with lurid headlines about how he had visited a spearmint rhino lap dancing club and the ensuing row with his girlfriend at the time, Chelsea Davy. The Sunday People reported at the time that Miss Davy had been screaming at him for half an hour on the phone. Another story described the couple having monumental arguments. When asked for proof that these and other stories were the result of phone hacking, the prince could only reply that it was suspicious. Sometimes his answers in the witness box contradicted his own version of events in his tell-all memoir, in which he spectacularly breached his own privacy and that of his family. On other occasions, it emerged that information he claimed to have been obtained illegally was actually put into the domain by the palace press office. At worst, his responses from the stand were reminiscent of Prince Andrew's disastrous Newsnight interview in demonstrating his distinct lack of grasp on reality. For a man apparently committed to reforming the press, he showed little understanding of the way the press works. In one striking example, the court heard Harry was unhappy about a story from May 2005 about his time at Sandhurst. The prince had suffered a knee injury, it was reported, which led to complaints from fellow cadets that he was being led off grueling marches.